In 1844, the Mormons began their trek to Salt Lake City. Along the way, they had to go through Native American hunting grounds. To prevent attacks on their way to Salt Lake City, the government signed the Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1851. In the treaty, it said that the Native Americans were promised a $50,000 yearly annuity. The promised annuities were late, and hungry Native Americans killed a passing Mormon immigrant's lame cow. The matter was reported to Fort Laramie, and on August 19, 1854, an Army detachment led by 2nd Lieutenant John Lawrence Grattan would march to a Sioux encampment to apprehend the Native American, High Forehead, for shooting the Mormon's cow. In the fight that would follow, they would be massacred. This is considered to be the first battle of the First Sioux War. Over a year later, on September 3, 1855, the Army would attack Little Thunder's village for revenge. Known as the Battle of Ash Hollow, the U.S. Army would triumph and kill 86 and capture 70. These battles and many more would start a flare for 40 years of war with the Sioux. Triumph for the U.S. was costly, though.
Beginning in 1844, Mormon immigrants traveled along the Mormon Trail. They were being persecuted in Missouri, known as the Mormon War. Their leader, Joseph Smith, Jr., was killed in jail as a result of the war. Their next leader, Brigham Young, had the Mormons begin a trek for a new place where they could worship their Lord. The trail stretches from Nauvoo, Illinois to Salt Lake City. It was a long, hard 1,300-mile journey.
The Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1851, was signed on September 17, 1851. It said that the Native Americans would have to appoint a head chief to represent them, the Sioux appointing Conquering Bear as head chief. The treaty also divided the Native American tribes into sections. Finally, it said that all disagreements must be solved by an Indian agent. In 1853, a large party of Minneconjous were camped at the Platte Ferry, on the north side of the North Platte River where the Iron Bridge is. They were harassing passing immigrants and demanding tolls. An argument broke out between a sergeant and a Minneconjou Indian. As the sergeant began crossing the river in a ferry boat, the Minneconjous shot at him. 2nd Lieutenant Hugh B. Fleming and 22 men were sent to arrest the Minneconjou. In the fight that followed, 3 Minneconjou were killed.
A large encampment of Sioux were waiting for their yearly annuities, as promised by the government in the Treaty of Fort Laramie. They had been camped there for a while, and their animals had begun running out of food. They had to travel farther and farther to get grass to eat. On August 18, 1854, a Mormon wagon train crossed paths with the Sioux encampment. A Mormon immigrant's lame cow escaped the wagon train. A visiting Minneconjou Indian named High Forehead shot the cow and ate it with other visiting Minneconjou. The owner of the cow reported this to Fort Laramie, then left, remaining nameless in history. The leader of the Sioux, Conquering Bear, also reported this to the fort, hoping to make amends, but he couldn't and returned to the camp. The next morning, August 19, 1854, a man afraid of his horses was sent to the fort as an ambassador for the Sioux, but was regarded as just another Indian. Eventually, 2nd Lieutenant John Lawrence Grattan was given permission by Lieutenant Hugh B. Fleming, the commanding officer at the fort, to apprehend High Forehead. He was given permission to bring 20 men and an interpreter with him, but Grattan asked for volunteers for a pair of the service. He accepted a sergeant, a corporal, 25 privates, 2 musicians, and an interpreter, along with a 12-pound mountain howitzer and a 12-pound Napoleon howitzer. The interpreter, Lucien Augusta, believed he was going to die. He said he was ready but wanted something to drink before he died. He was given a bottle, and he began to drink. They then set off. By the time they arrived, the interpreter was drunk. Conquering Bear then tried to negotiate. He told them that the cow was dead and nothing could be done about it. In trade, he offered them his most prized possessions, some of his horses. But Grattan did not want horses. He demanded that he was given High Forehead to take him to jail. Conquering Bear tried to explain that High Forehead was a visiting Minneconjou, and that he couldn't do that, but Grattan wouldn't listen. At some point, Grattan ordered his men to fire. They mortally wounded Conquering Bear. The Sioux then attacked the soldiers. The soldiers panicked and were quickly overwhelmed and killed. Private John Cuddy escaped the battle and made it back to the fort, but was mortally wounded. He died 3 days later. The tragedy of massacre was the loss of life. Conquering Bear and the soldiers involved in the massacre all died. The Native Americans called the tragic battle a fair fight, but word spread quickly. America wasn't going to let this massacre slide.
A year later, the U.S. Army would stage an attack on Little Thunder's village. With General William Hardee leading, the battle would last from September 2nd to September 3rd. A group of dragoons would circle around the Native Americans undetected while General Hardee and Chief Little Thunder had a conference. General Hardee would eventually order his men to fire. The Sioux were forced backwards into the waiting dragoons. The U.S. Army triumphed and killed 86 Sioux. They captured 70 women and children. The result of these two battles was war on the plains. Crazy Horse, who was at the Battle of Ash Hollow, would be angry with the U.S. He would become a famous Sioux war leader. War with the Sioux would change everything.
Ghost dancing was a spiritual movement. They believed they had angered their gods by abandoning their spiritual traditions. They believed if they did ghost dance, their gods would destroy all non-believers, including non-Indians.
On December 29, 1890, the U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry would surround a group of Sioux ghost dancers, led by Bigfoot, near Wounded Creek. The soldiers demanded that the Sioux give up their weapons. In this process, a shot was fired. In the horrendous battle that followed, an estimated 150 Sioux were killed. The cavalry suffered 25 deaths. Though tragic, this battle would end war on the plains. Deaths in any war are tragic. Hundreds died from both sides because of the Grattan massacre. It was pointless fighting over a lame cow. The war produced tragic battles like Custer's Last Stand, the Fetterman Massacre, and the Dull Knife Fight. The Native Americans lost land and were forced onto reservations. It was 40 years of tragic war.
The U.S. Army would triumph over the Sioux in the end. The Battle of Ash Hollow would be the turning point in the Sioux War. The Wounded Knee Massacre snuffed out the last resistance in the Sioux, and the war was over. Native Americans in the U.S. were finally able to find peace.